It began like all great disruptions do, quietly, confidently, and without the noisy desperation of those trying to claw their way into relevance. Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, had dropped her as-ever preserves into the marketplace like a silk-gloved hand placing a crown jewel on a velvet cushion. No press circus, no hollow photo ops, no forced smiles under harsh fluorescent lights. Just a product so impeccable, so visually magnetic, so unapologetically premium that it broke the internet within hours of release. Customers weren't just buying jam. They were buying a statement, an aesthetic, an experience. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, inside the dimly lit corridors of royal kitchens, another figure was stirring a pot. Not of innovation, but of imitation. King Charles III, apparently having noticed that Meghan's preserves had swept the shelves and Instagram feeds with tidal force, decided to roll out his own jarred product. But instead of matching her standard, he reached for the bargain bin playbook. Priced at $6, barely half the cost of Meghan's elegant, high-fruit, low-sugar preserves, Charles's offering strutted into the market calling itself jam, though the label told a different, more humiliating story. This wasn't even jam in the true culinary sense. No, it was a fruit spread, a category politely reserved for products with more fruit pulp than sugar, but often made from cheaper fruit grades, bulk purees, and stabilizers that no artisan worth their copper pan would touch. Where Meghan's preserves shimmered like hand-cut gemstones in a glass jar, Charles's fruit spread slouched in its packaging, looking more like the contents of a school cafeteria condiment bucket than a royal delicacy. And yet, the label clung stubbornly to the word jam, as if repeating the lie would make it true. The marketing spin was bold, almost admirably so in its audacity, but for anyone who knew their way around a kitchen, the truth bled through like watered-down berry juice on a paper napkin. This was the culinary equivalent of wearing a plastic tiara to a coronation. Preserves, the way Meghan Sussex makes them, are the purest form of fruit alchemy. Large, jewel-like pieces of real fruit suspended in a naturally glossy syrup, crafted in small batches so the flavour blooms with every spoonful. They have weight, dignity, and presence, much like the woman herself. You open the jar, and the aroma isn't just sweet. It's a sunlit memory, orchard mornings, warm breezes, and the slow confidence of something made without shortcuts. King Charles's so-called jam, on the other hand, is the edible equivalent of a royal PR statement, surface gloss, thin substance. The label says jam, but the ingredient list whispers fruit spread, a term that might sound artisanal until you learn what it actually means in food law. In Britain and the EU, preserves must contain a minimum percentage of fruit solids and be made with recognisable chunks of fruit. Jam is a step down, smoother, less texture, but still expected to carry honest fruit content. Fruit spread? That's the budget cousin at the family reunion. Bulk processed puree, often from frozen or reconstituted fruit, thickened with pectin and sweetened enough to hide its lack of character. Now, Meghan's as-ever preserves come with a price tag of around $12, and every cent is in the jar. Hand-selected fruit, low sugar, so the real flavour sings, careful cooking in copper pots, so the berries retain their shape and their dignity. When the light hits that jar, you see fruit, not gelatinous red paste. Charles's $6 royal jam enters the room like it's wearing a paper crown from a Christmas cracker. Technically headwear, but fooling no one. The fruit is so processed it could have been picked during the last decade, the colour suspiciously uniform, and the texture so aggressively smoothed that you could spread it with a makeup brush. The sugar content, ironically, often higher than Meghan's, exists to mask the fact that this product lacks the layered flavour of real preserves. And here's where the humiliation deepens. Calling this jam when it's clearly fruit spread is like standing at Buckingham Palace's balcony in a polyester robe and telling the world it's ermine. The label might fool tourists, but the public with taste buds, they'll know. Oh, they'll know. It was a bright, brisk morning in the tasting hall, a long oak table dressed with white linen, sunlight pouring through mullioned windows. On one end, a lineup of gleaming as-ever jars, each capped with Meghan Sussex's understated yet elegant branding. On the other, King Charles's fruit spread sat squat and self-conscious, its labels trying to look important, but the jar shape itself giving off supermarket clearance aisle energy. The tasters arrived, a motley crew of chefs, bakers, journalists, and curious citizens who'd queued for hours after hearing rumours that the king's jam was about to go head-to-head with Meghan's internet-breaking preserves. Meghan's jar was opened with the quiet pop of a perfect seal. The room instantly filled with the scent of fresh-picked berries, ripe, tart, and sun-warmed. The colour inside? A ruby-red shimmer, fruit pieces clearly visible, like garnets suspended in honeyed light. Charles's jar was next. The seal gave way with an anticlimactic plop. A faint, flat sweetness emerged, not unpleasant but eerily reminiscent of budget airline breakfast condiments. The spread inside was smooth, too smooth, the kind of smooth that says, "We processed this until every natural texture surrendered." When Meghan's preserves were scooped, the spoon lifted generous chunks of fruit cushioned in a syrup that clung without dripping, a sign of skillful cooking and natural pectin balance. Charles's spread slid off the spoon in one uniform blob, like a jelly-based stress ball being released. The Meghan jar went first. Silence fell as spoons met lips. Then came the murmurs. Not polite murmurs, but those involuntary noises of approval people make when the flavour is so good it bypasses manners. Words like bright, authentic, and "you can taste the orchard" floated through the air. One baker dabbed the corner of her eye with a napkin, swearing she'd just had a memory of picking blackberries with her grandmother. Then Charles's turn. The tasters sampled politely, chewing more out of duty than desire. The first comment was diplomatic. "It's sweet." The second, less so. "Sweet and what is that? Like boiled fruit candy?" Someone else whispered, "It tastes red but not berry red." One man asked for water before finishing his spoonful. The crowd's applause for Meghan's preserves could have lifted the roof. Charles's jar received polite claps, the kind you give a child for participating in a school play without forgetting their lines. It was, in every sense, a coronation, but not for the king. By the afternoon, the taste test footage had gone viral. The internet, with its unmatched ability to sniff out weakness, pounced like a cat on a falling feather. Clips of tasters' polite but pained expressions when sampling Charles's spread were replayed in slow motion, overlaid with dramatic violin music. The moment one judge grimaced and reached for water was instantly turned into a looping gif, captioned, "When you realise the king's jam tastes like it's been in storage since the Silver Jubilee." On Twitter, or what the Palace PR team still insists on calling X, the hashtags began to trend. #Jamgate, #Fruitless Spread, #Charles Cheap Churn. One user posted a side-by-side image, Meghan's jar glistening in natural light versus Charles's jar under dull indoor lighting. The caption read, "On the left, summer in Provence. On the right, school lunch in 1983. Instagram food bloggers jumped in too, uploading videos of themselves doing blind taste tests between Meghan's preserves and Charles's fruit spread. Without fail, every single one picked Meghan's, often spitting Charles's back into a napkin in exaggerated slow motion for comedic effect. TikTok was particularly merciless. A popular creator stitched footage of Charles stirring a pot with the words, "When you can't beat her in grace, class or style, so you try jam, and still lose." The clip cut to Meghan's A's Ever jars being stacked on boutique shelves as Empire by Shakira played in the background. Even food scientists joined the fun, making explainer videos about the difference between preserves and fruit spread, with Charles's jar held up as a cautionary example. One viral comment summed it up neatly. "Fruit spread is what happens when jam loses the will to live." Meanwhile, Meghan's sales numbers, already dizzying, spiked again. Retailers reported that every restock sold out within minutes, while Charles's $6 jars languished on shelves, some marked down to £3.50 in an attempt to move them. One supermarket employee was overheard telling a colleague, "We've sold more expired pickled onions this week than royal jam." The humiliation wasn't just in the taste, it was in the symbolism. Meghan was operating in a league where quality spoke for itself. Charles was operating in a clearance aisle scramble, trying to match her prestige with bargain pricing and a product that barely met the definition of its own name. And the public wasn't letting him forget it. To all my curious Sussex family, thank you all for watching and do not forget to subscribe, like and put ACOM. Let's meet in our next episode.